I'm Sham, and I have Dr. Tejasvi with me. This is our monthly roundup of all things crypto. So, Tejasvi, are you following the nonsense around the WazirX hack and what they tried to do afterwards and where we are at this point?
A little bit. So in July, I kind of followed this very closely when the hack actually happened. Hi guys, sorry to jump into the deep end immediately. So let's quick welcome to all our listeners to Cryptonite. Anyway, coming back to WazirX. So for people who know already, this is an introduction. WazirX is a crypto exchange in India or offshore exchange in India with founders, I think, living in Dubai with a bunch of Indian accounts, some KYC happening. So it's kind of a legit exchange, you could say. So they had a custody practice where all of their crypto assets were held in a 4 out of 6 multi-sig. What that means is there were 6 authorized signers, out of which if 4 of them authorized it, they could actually withdraw the money. Typically, they used to do this so they can move money from their cold wallet to their hot wallets, and the hot wallets would then be used to either take funds or give funds back to users. So they had a setup where 3 signers were from WazirX, and 1 signer was from a company called Luminaire or something, which was like a custodian. And that second signer would check if the 3 signers have done a good job, whether it violates any policy, whether they're doing KYC AML. So they were like this kind of secondary backstop to make sure that the things don't go wrong. So in this case, the 3 WazirX signers signed over the transaction, and the third party custodian also signed over the transaction, and all the 4 agreed on this transaction. And this transaction did not actually let the hackers take away the money. What the hackers did was actually kind of a little bit more fancier. What they did was, in crypto, typically what happens is your account is sometimes held in what is called a safe. So it's like a multi-sig safe, which is like a smart contract. So those guys actually upgraded the smart contract and didn't withdraw money from it. So what they did was, there was a version of smart contract on the chain which had all the money. These hackers upgraded the contract, and the upgraded contract did not need any checks and balances. It was like you can withdraw from it silently. So when the WazirX people approved the transaction, they would have seen that this is an upgrade and not a withdrawal. So they would have been a bit more casual about it. I think this part they have not actually released the postmortem yet. So eventually they got upgraded the contract, and then the contract was drained pretty much immediately. And then it was mixed in through a bunch of mixers. The suspicion is it was done by North Korea, or the Lazarus group, as they're called. They have been behind many hacks over the last many years. There is a suspicion that it's a part of the North Korean establishment, and it's a way of them to generate money. So they basically earn money as a part by just hacking these smart contracts and crypto exchanges and stuff like that. So it's state sanctioned, approved by the government. Everything kind of run above board in North Korea, but of course, for the rest of the world, it's pretty bad. So $230 million worth of crypto was stolen, and there was no communication from the hackers. Typically, if it's a normal hacker who is in the rest of the world, in the US or Europe or India somewhere, they don't want to be on the run forever. So they know that people can trace these hacks, and they will be in the criminal net in some sense, and they want to eventually say that I'll give you 90% of the money back. Can you let me keep 10% of the money as a bug bounty? This is what typically people do. But there was no communication from these hackers. It was completely black after that, which is a sign that they have no intention of returning the money. So the money was all gone to North Korea, and we should hopefully, when we go to North Korea and enjoy the bridges and the hotels and the sunshine, we should thank the hack essentially. So WazirX blamed the custodian blamed WazirX. There was a bunch of back and forth. There was no postmortem, I think, from what I know, published. Some people did some forensics on top of it and figured out that it was North Korea, but that's about it. I think it's quite sad. I think WazirX can afford it. They might have a balance sheet which is stronger than 230 million. I am a bit suspicious of that. They might have some insurance, also not going to cover it. So right now, I think it is probably an existential event for them. I have not tracked after that. Like after end of July, I have not really kept in touch with what's happened. Do you have any follow up on this?
Right. So what they tried to do was obviously not all accounts were hacked. So some people, had their crypto intact. And what WazirX said was, we'll allow only withdrawal up to 60% of what you own. So as to give some of those remaining funds to the people who were hacked. So it's sort of like socializing the losses. And there was a huge hue and cry about it, amongst the people who were not hacked, obviously, saying, what the hell is this? We never signed up for this and all that. So it went on for like a couple of days, and then they backtracked it and said, okay, fine, you own what you own, and tough luck to the guys who lost their lost their crypto. So I thought that this was one of those things where they did no favors to the people who want to mainstream crypto in India, saying like, who is this dude sitting in Dubai, asking us to take losses, right? While we especially when we were unaffected. And there was also a bit of finger pointing, saying there's no guarantees that the CEO itself might have orchestrated the hack, given the lack of transparency around it, and lack of any sort of follow through on where did the money go, or you mentioned insurance and so on, but there's literally no news about it in the social media. So they were like, what next, right? So, and this brings up a few sort of thorny issues in this sector as well, because obviously this the key management personnel, KMP, so to speak, are all in Dubai, which is a non-extradition treaty country. And proving financial crimes in Dubai is pretty much impossible. So they are well insulated from, and the angry clients that they have in India, because after all, it started in India, right? So most of their clients are in India. And also, the lack of sort of like, where do you take your grievance to, right? So it's not regulated by SEBI, it's not regulated by RBI, and is the registration process is a joke. So there's literally nothing you can do about it. So it's $230 million gone, and everybody is just like, tough luck.
Yeah, no, this is not surprising. It has happened before in many exchanges. Uh, in this case, I think the on-chain footprint of the wallet and what happened to the wallet pre and post have been somewhat more transparent, so to speak. And people have almost identified the actual addresses that eventually hold the money, and those addresses have been tainted before with North Korean activity. Unlike, for example, other exchanges where there was a suspicion that the founder orchestrated the hack and kind of ran away with the money. There was this guy from a Canadian exchange, Quadriga, which the exchange founder claimed to have visited India, kind of no connection to WazirX, and then he supposedly died in India out of some disease, but the body was not found or whatever. I mean, he kind of disappeared in some sense, right? The idea was that he died in India, but we're not really sure. So that exchange had, I think, around $500 million of assets of various people, and it kind of he had the only key apparently to move the assets. In this case, there were like a bunch of other people, and WazirX has been pretty legit for the last many years, and they have run the business pretty above board. So it is really unfortunate that they had to kind of have this situation. I actually wish them well. In my opinion, they have not done wrong. Of course, you can argue that having a honeypot like that for other people to attack you and then not being protected by insurance, by regulation, or whatever is a problem. That is probably true. I think that's the nature of the game. But in the confines of the game, I think they were playing above board. So I wish they're able to recover this from this somehow and move on, hopefully.
Cool. So what else is happening? So are you following the Telegram saga?
Yes, Telegram
Like,
has been.
isn't like 99% of crypto on Telegram?
It is. This is actually multiple. There are multiple problems in this. One is so Telegram is kind of very closely woven with crypto in many ways. So one is Telegram is probably the most widely used chat application in the crypto community. So crypto Twitter is a big deal where public communications happen, but for private communications, Telegram is the mode of choice. And this will is completely surprising, to put it bluntly, because people have known that Telegram has had backdoors. There is a famous blog post from 2014 when when one of Telegram's cryptographic algorithms was proven to have a backdoor, and that backdoor was not accidental; it was deliberately inserted. And of course, they changed the protocol after that, and now it has a cryptographic protocol which is more standard. But there is no guarantee that the group chats are private. There's no guarantee that the one-to-one chats are private. DMs are private. Nothing is guaranteed to be private. Uh, so they are like kind of not private at all, let's assume. And all the data goes to the Russian FSB or the US NSA and all these other folks. Given all of this, the fact that they were the Telegram CEO was blocked in France and arrested in France is a bit surprising, because I thought France would have had access to it already. So my assumption is that uh, somehow France was not as a part of the league of people who were having access to Telegram, and they got upset about it, and they kind of wanted to, I think, show their strength or whatever, something along those lines. Anyway, that's one part of crypto which is in Telegram. Then Telegram also is a backer of a blockchain called TON. So TON blockchain is a part of the Telegram ecosystem, where, for example, if you have a TON blockchain wallet, it's natively integrated into the Telegram client. So you can send crypto and buy crypto, receive whatever using the Telegram client. You can do trades, you can do DeFi actions. It's very corely or thoroughly integrated with the TON blockchain. And TON blockchain, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, had an outage the moment Dura was arrested for like maybe 6 7 hours. It's now back up and running. I guess there was some panic or something happened. I really don't know what happened there. So yeah, it's still kind of confusing. We don't know. Of course, it's unacceptable that he has been detained for using cryptography against permission and stuff. I mean, I read the charges against him. The charges against him are basically, it says you're using a cryptographic protocol without asking for permission, right? Which is kind of ridiculous. But that's what they're doing. There is, of course, a possibility that Telegram has encouraged all sorts of nefarious activities, or rather turned a blind eye towards them. Like if there is some terrorist plot being hashed on Telegram, they might have not bothered censoring that group or whatever it is, right? So they have been much more laissez-faire about folks talking on Telegram. And yeah, it's tricky now. I don't know what will happen if Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg visits France. I don't know whether there's like some weird, I don't know, like witch hunt going on there as well. So for me, my only hope against all of this, from all of this, was that people would shift to Signal or something after Telegram CEO was hacked or was taken in. But nothing like that has happened. Crypto continues to move on Telegram. We are using it everywhere. It is sad. It's true. It's inexplicable. It's completely inexplicable that Telegram has a network effect in the crypto industry, which cannot be taken by Signal. It's truly surprising.
Right, to death or glory, right?
Indeed,
um,
indeed.
I, I mean, these network effects are very difficult to unseat. I mean, look at Twitter, right? So, as soon as Elon Musk took over, there's a huge exodus of people out of it, to different platforms for a bit. I count at least three, post Musk takeover, but none of them kind of stuck. So they're all back on X or whatever it is called now, and doing the same thing. So it's very difficult to kind of unseat network effects.
Yeah,
So
X as well, and same with Facebook, same with all of these platforms. Once they capture like this kind of critical mass of people, it's very, and even in crypto, people have been trying to move off of Twitter and Telegram for a long time. So in the Bitcoin community, there is an effort called Noster. So Noster is this kind of peer-to-peer protocol which is beyond censorship and all of that. There's no central server, and some people have moved to there, like some of the core influencers in the Bitcoin space. But apparently, it's pretty lonely out there. I have been there once. I tried to chat with people. It was very difficult. Then for Twitter, there was another version called Farcaster, which kind of became a big deal, like maybe 5 6 months ago. Uh, Very heavily venture funded, Farcaster, and Farcaster is also not doing that great from what I know right now. So these efforts have happened before. So Matrix was another protocol that was trying to move people away from Telegram and WhatsApp and Signal. Again, did not go anywhere. People have tried a lot. It's difficult to know what causes that shift eventually. It did happen, right? Like, for example, people have moved from other networks before, like, say, Friendster or MySpace or whatever it is. But I guess that was a long time ago. I think those competitive pressures are not there anymore, from what I can see.
And also, see, from MySpace they moved to Facebook, and Facebook at that point was a much better coded, right? It was a much better product compared to MySpace, which was, outaging all over the place. And then the founder took it upon himself to be the first friend in MySpace to everybody. That just sounds creepy. So so if you want to go above, I mean, if you want to make it much more than a niche, then then it takes a little bit of effort into the product and making things less creepy. uh, so I think that explains half of what it is. So it's mostly death by suicide, not really anything else.
Not
And
competitive.
if you look at Snap, right, I always wondered how the hell is Snap still around? And and it's not a profitable business by any means. And the problem they have is the core demographic are teens, and they age out. So once you stop being in that cohort, you kind of like stop using the product. So they have to spend, repeatedly keep spending more and more money to attract that the preteens into the system. And so they don't make much money. So it's fascinating that Snap has been around for like almost like a decade and a half now. And they're still trying to figure this out. So um, yeah, social networks, I mean, Google also tried it, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
Google Plus or what,
Many
is a
times, many
disaster.
times. Google Plus, the Google 360, and there were like a whole bunch of efforts which all went nowhere. Uh, if you think about it, I think it's also like even Facebook, I think, has aged a little bit. Like, I know people who are kind of uh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Instagram is still kind of, Facebook has at least the advantage of having acquired some good properties as a part of their growing up, which I guess would makes more sense now. Yeah, so it's so I hope Telegram doesn't stay as relevant in crypto anymore. But it's hard to unseat them, at least from the looks of it.
Right. Speaking of unseating stuff, so what is going on in Ethereum? So like if you cycle back a year, right? I was really fascinated by Ethereum. I thought that that was the future, right? Because it's sort of like a god computing platform. And it's sad to see that things are kind of sort of dispersed away from Ethereum. Not much going on. So what's your take on it?
It's actually quite fascinating, and I don't think the verdict is as easy to pronounce as it seems sometimes on the outside. So Ethereum's problem has been that it has a very tight spot to navigate between following the crypto punk or cypherpunk ethos of Bitcoin, and also doing this whole world god computer thingy. So the problem is essentially, if you want to really get all the computing in the world on a single platform, but you still want to be decentralized, censorship resistant, and preserving the ethos of Bitcoin in some sense, you necessarily have to make some trade-offs. And the trade-offs are around this idea of liquidity, which is like this kind of bizarre place where, because Ethereum went with this idea that it'll have all these smaller platforms on top, each platform has its own kind of mirror image of what's happening, and the liquidity of Ethereum gets split between all of these platforms. So think of it as this, right? I mean, like, basically, if you think of a country having multiple banks, if each bank can integrate with each other seamlessly, then the economy runs very smoothly because there is liquidity kind of moving freely across. But right now in Ethereum, what's happened is all these silos on top of Ethereum, their interoperability is not that good. So, for example, one of the big silos on top of Ethereum is called Base, and Base is run by Coinbase. So Coinbase runs this kind of network on top of Ethereum. It is trusted in the sense that if you have money on the Base ecosystem, Base cannot take the money away from you. So you can withdraw money back to Ethereum with a single transaction. So that guarantee is given to you. Now, Base is one such ecosystem. Then there is Arbitrum, which is another ecosystem, Optimism, another ecosystem. There are many of those. And if you have money on base, you really are only dealing with the money inside base itself. You cannot actually access liquidity from outside of base. And that restricts this idea of where smart contracts are kind of acting in some sense. So a smart contract on base is kind of restricted by the liquidity in base. Now, this is okay as long as eventually the pipes connecting these ecosystems are built, and eventually things will kind of become smoother and they will happen. So if you allow the next 5 years, 6 years to play out kind of organically with some sort of a protection from the outside world, this will happen. This will evolve properly. But the world is not so simple. There's a lot of pressure from the outside world. And the outside world in this case is represented by Solana. And Solana kind of took this other opposite stance, which is they will never fracture liquidity. They will always keep everything on the base layer, and they will make the base layer faster and faster and faster and more high performant. And they've done this in a very fundamental way. They've taken a bunch of approaches which are so technically sophisticated, at the same time also a bit naive, in the sense that they have this hope that all of the world's transactions will actually live on a base layer without really going into like all these silos. So what happened because of this underlying structure is when Ethereum ETF launched, the ETH ETF demand was not as high. So the ETH inflow was, the dollar inflow to the ETH ecosystem was low, and that caused this kind of sideways movement of the ETH token. All the while, Bitcoin is kind of still going up steadily, and Solana was also kind of going up steadily. And the ETH investor community got a bit kind of upset about this, saying that what's happening, why is Ethereum kind of trying to focus away liquidity to other assets? Like, for example, Base, which is this Coinbase owned platform, ideally should also pay fees to the base layer. So essentially, if you're a bank in India and you do a lot of operations, you have to like contribute to the kind of underlying economy somehow. In this case, Base was supposed to pay back some fees to Ethereum, but Base did not choose to do that. They kept the fees for themselves for the most part, which is entirely fair because that's how the system is designed. But then people are unhappy that the fees is not coming through to the base layer. The base layer is not getting any value, and kind of things got very heated. And then a bunch of Ethereum figureheads, or the high priests of Ethereum, wrote a bunch of articles, wrote a bunch of tweets defending Ethereum's roadmap, saying that we don't care about this crypto casino that's going on in Solana or wherever. We want real stuff to happen on Ethereum, where real world assets are actually being traded, where real things are being built, and not some DeFi token leveraging itself up on another DeFi token, and there is cross margin of DeFi tokens, and then you kind of do some other DeFi shenanigans. They said, this is not really what the purpose of our platform is. We need to bring real money, real yield, real counterparties, real finance on top of this. And that was very badly received. People in the Ethereum ecosystem really went crazy about how can these high priests of Ethereum look down upon us and think that our activity is not worth their attention or whatever it is. That kind of became a big ruckus. Separately on the side, there is a thing called Ethereum Foundation, which is not Ethereum, obviously. They're two different things. Ethereum Foundation is a not-for-profit body headquartered in Switzerland, not quite far from where I live. Its job is to foster the Ethereum ecosystem by giving grants, by funding projects, by doing things. Where does it get the money from? Not by donations, not by people who charitably give to Ethereum Foundation. When Ethereum was created, a large swath of ETH tokens was earmarked for the Ethereum Foundation. So the Ethereum Foundation has ETH from 2015, which it is slowly selling to give all these grants and stuff. And this year they sold $100 million worth of ETH to power all of these initiatives and things. And that didn't go too well either, because you're spending all this money for what? What are you getting from it? Are you getting marketing? Are you getting some favorable outcomes? Is the value of ETH going up because of your efforts? Not so much. So people are a little bit upset about how Ethereum is doing. So this is kind of the general perception outside. I personally believe that this is a long game, and in the long game, Solana might not be sustainable. But that's a TBD. I'm not sure about this, because Solana has put in so much engineering into this that they might be able to engineer themselves out of it. They might be able to out-engineer the constraints that are placed by the real world. So, for example, Solana really, to give you one example, In Solana, the packet size of all the network packets is hard coded to 1286 bytes, which is the actual hard coded limit of the IP protocol. So they have thought at that level where they so know that if the network packet is the same size as their business logic packet, then it will make it faster to move it around. So you don't have to like combine two packets to kind of parse it and stuff. So they have thought at that level, and they have done their technical engineering at so many levels to make it faster and more efficient that they might be able to out engineer themselves out of this mess. So it's TBD. Ethereum has a kind of more purist outlook on how it should be done. Solana has a more move fast and break things and kind of Web 2, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok attitude about innovation. And they are at loggerheads against each other. And of course, the meme, right? The two women are fighting and this guy smoking a pipe. So Bitcoin is the pipe smoker here, where Solana and ETH are going at each other. Bitcoin is like, you know what, guys, fight it out. Let's see what happens, and it's having a good time. I mean, and Bitcoin steadily goes up. Dollar inflows to the ETF is coming in. Price is kind of sideways, but nothing shocking, nothing interesting. It's boring and good. That's kind of where I stand on this.
Right. So to think of this, in banking terms, right, that you brought up earlier. So Ethereum is sort of like, okay, you have different banks that tap into this, into the same base layer. So it's sort of like, okay, Ethereum is like the RBI, so to speak, managing liquidity underneath it all. But the banks don't pay taxes. So therein lies the problem. So there's no way for the RBI to extract any fees or anything for supervising these guys. So they just built the platform and said everybody is just having fun on top of it. Whereas Solana is more like, if everybody had a central bank issued currency and and a bank account directly with the central bank, so you don't need banks at all. So they just manage the overall system liquidity, centrally, so to speak.
And they charge a small fee
um,
for it.
right. So I think, if you explain it like this, I would expect Solana to win, because the whole banking system makes sense in the analog world, where you need distribution, where you need boots on the ground to do your KYCs and so on and so forth, and all the other compliances. But in a purely digital world where those constraints don't exist, then a centralized system ends up winning. At least in the with this banking analog.
Definitely. And the point is, a centralized system will end up winning as long as the system is benevolent and it works for everybody. But when the system is not benevolent and somebody says, this transaction is not okay, then you get into the very tricky political problem. So to give you an example of where this can go, uh, Solana some people tried to file a Solana-based ETF in the US, which was rejected by the SEC. With the possible claim that Solana is a security, and it's not actually truly decentralized in the sense that it's not a commodity like Ethereum and Bitcoin are. So there is a notion that Solana is still centralized, because it needs such a high throughput of execution. All of these guys who are running nodes are centralized in some data centers, and they're kind of making it work. So Ethereum, for all its problems, is still very decentralized. So if you think about it, UPI in India is very efficient. Liquidity is instant across banks. Banks are almost irrelevant in terms of payments these days. But that gives you a choke point. And we are hoping that the choke point is not used by malicious people or people in power. The odds are low that they will be used. But crypto was built for all sorts of applications where you might not agree with who's using it for what. And then it becomes more interesting. And to give you the kind of the other side of this, Ethereum used to have these transactions that were built by a bunch of these builders, like they're equivalent to miners or stakers, if you want to call them. And many of them were respecting the OFAC sanctions. So OFAC in the US has a list of addresses where you can't send money to, or you can't like encourage transactions from those addresses. And there are like thousands of addresses in this list. They belong to the Lazarus group in North Korea. They belong to like other people who are like blacklisted or whatever. And the Ethereum validators, for the most part, used to censor those transactions. And only around maybe 4% or 5% of validators did not censor them. And those validators, we didn't know where they were. They could have been in China, in India, Kazakhstan, wherever they were. Over the last 3 months, the number of people who are censoring has actually dropped. So right now, around 70% of Ethereum validators are not censoring anymore. Something changed. Some jurisdiction changed. Some people moved out of the US. I don't know what happened exactly. But suddenly, a bunch of OFAC sanctioned transactions earlier are now being allowed. So Ethereum still kind of goes into this tricky area where you don't know really whether it's legal in the real world or not. But Solana doesn't have that luxury. Solana, the guy who started Solana is in California. His partner is in California. The organization is registered in California. The validators are in Amazon or Google Compute or wherever, because you need that kind of hardware to run the Solana validators. And I can't run a Solana validator on my computer here. It's a lot of questions. It needs like 600 gig of RAM or whatever, some obscene number like that. So yeah, I think there is a bit of a tricky one here. We will have to see how it will play out. Right now, I'm not sure.
Right. Wow. So moving on. So what is okay? I keep forgetting what restaking is. So can you? So you've
Restaking.
written something like Bitcoin restaking. So I forgot what
Yeah,
restaking is.
I can give you a quick lowdown on this. So for people who are not aware of all the crypto in the weeds crypto stuff, I'll just give you kind of a quick breakdown of proof of work, staking, and restaking. So proof of work was essentially pretty simple. You bring a bunch of computers which have a bunch of electricity, you do a bunch of operations, and if the operations hit a jackpot, you make some money. Bitcoin is given to you and you move on. The network kind of moves on. People are churning a lot of electricity to kind of do this. Proof of stake was an evolution of that protocol, or some people say it's kind of a parallel line because it's not superior, but it's different, where you basically bring in money and say that I have put in this much money into the system, and if I make a mistake, then you can take away some of my money. So in proof of work, what happened was you burn a bunch of electricity and you write a block, and if the block has a mistake, then all the electricity you put in to mine it is kind of wasted. So the real physical cost is kind of given up. Here, there is some actual money in the equation, and you take away the money to make it work. Now, some networks bootstrapped long time ago, so they have historical value. Ethereum, for example, has a bunch of ETH staked. Life is good. Network is running. People have staked ETH. There is around 30% of ETH which is staked in the network, and people are running with it. Now, if you want to bootstrap a new network, let's say I want to bootstrap a network that will do something else, like math operations or whatever, something cool, or some DeFi or something else. Now, I have to bootstrap my own token to have it for it to have some value, and then that value has to then guard the network. It's kind of a chicken and egg problem, because unless the network is doing something valuable, there is no token value. Unless the token has value, the network cannot be secure. So it's kind of this bootstrapping problem which was difficult to solve. So one idea which came about last year was this idea of restaking, where you say that, you know what, the bootstrapping network will use some staked ETH in the Ethereum network as a crutch to kind of bootstrap itself. And then once the bootstrapping happens, it will bootstrap its own token and kind of give up its reliance on ETH. So it's kind of a bootstrapping mechanism for new networks. And ETH is very reliably, it's capable of doing this because it's programmable. You can say that, okay, in my new network, I will monitor the ETH blockchain. And if ETH does something, then I will do something or whatever. And I can deploy a smart contract on Ethereum to monitor this blockchain and kind of make it work. So because ETH is programmable, life was easy and you could do this. So the main project that did this was called EigenLayer. And EigenLayer was a multi-billion-dollar project which is doing pretty well right now. Started by an Indian guy, was a professor in I think University of Washington. I think IIT Madras probably, if you go back all the way. So EigenLayer is doing well on Ethereum, and it's kind of starting off. Networks are getting bootstrapped, and life is good. But Bitcoin, on the other hand, doesn't do any staking. There's nothing happening in Bitcoin, right? So somebody wanted to invent this idea of, can I use Bitcoin to protect a network which is getting bootstrapped? So let's say you are a Bitcoin holder with say 10 Bitcoin. You want to say that I'm going to run this new node of this new network, but I'm going to do it reliably. If I don't do it reliably, my Bitcoin can be seized. That is not possible right now because Bitcoin doesn't know when you have made a mistake on the other layer. So let's say you make a mistake on some layer, some other software you're running. Bitcoin has no clue to check that. Bitcoin will not slash you for it. So they came up with a very clever approach where they said that if you make a mistake in the other layer, your private key will get leaked. So it's a cryptographic construction entirely based on math, where the private key that controls your Bitcoin can be broadcast to the real world in plain text if you make a mistake on this other blockchain. And of course, how they do it is fairly complicated and sophisticated. But I thought it was worth enough to talk about because it's a nifty idea, which is saying that, like, think of it this way, right? You have a bank, and the bank will not honor your. Let's say you want to pledge your some assets as a collateral and do some house building or whatever. And if the house you don't do the proper house job or whatever, the bank should kind of take away your collateral. But let's say the bank says, I don't know how to do this, I will not do it. You have this new scheme where you say that my bank password will be leaked if I don't do a good job on the side somewhere else, which is crazy if you think about it. Like, how is that even possible? How do you link the two? How do you make it happen? How do you reliably make it happen? Which was a cool idea, I thought. It's a project which went live a few days ago, and around 1,000 Bitcoin has been staked in it. So 1,000 Bitcoin worth of value is trying to protect this new network, which is bootstrapping itself, which is kind of an interesting idea, I thought. It just shows that in this innovation is going on at various levels. Bitcoin is not stagnant in this way. So there is kind of interesting, I would call it kind of ground level innovations, which are still math and cryptography based, but trying to do something kind of interesting on the side.
Right. So speaking of leaking, right? So this strategy is actually very popular with these loan apps in India. So so you install this app that supposed to give you loans, and part of the deal is you give it full access to your phone, social media, your photos, and everything,
Like root access
and
to your
they
phone.
yeah, full access, right,
What
to all
for?
your social media accounts, your photos and everything, and they give you a loan. And if you miss a repayment, then they just bombard your social media with the fact that uh, you're a deadbeat, or they'll
So
assign someone who will then go through all the photos you've taken and see if there's anything compromising there, and threaten to leak it and
wow,
all that. Yeah, so it's a huge problem. So obviously
are
these are
people
not
actually using
registered with
this
the
product?
RBI. Most of them are Chinese. So it's like the Chinese loan app problem in India.
Are people using these apps?
Yeah, so I would say that some people don't know what they're getting into. It sounds like easy money. They click on an ad or something like that and say that says, like, you borrow 10 grand now and repay every day, or so they have like a very innovative way of extracting repayment schedules. And the APRs are usually like 120%, because it's ridiculous. But these are all mostly like sub 1 lakh rupee loans, and this is the deal. And it became a big problem a few months ago. And RBI came out with a lot of notices and so on, saying this is ridiculous, this needs to be stopped. But there are quite a few horror stories where people got trapped in this, because it's a high APR thing,
Obviously.
and they ended up borrowing from one app to repay another app and so on. So they just got into this debt trap. So
Man,
yeah,
I mean, it
so
sounds
leaking,
funny till it is not funny.
yeah, so leaking personal information because you did some financial, because you missed some financial covenant is pretty normal. I not normal, but it's not a new idea, and that's kind of why it. I don't know. It sounds a bit shaky that your entire financial sort of future is at stake.
No,
What if there's a bomb or something
I
like
think it shows you something else, right? Like if you draw the real parallel here, actually, it's a very profound point what you make. The real parallel here is in Bitcoin's case, Bitcoin doesn't acknowledge that the rest of the world exists. It says that the rest of the world doesn't exist. So I don't know how to read whether you have done the bad thing or not somewhere else. So I cannot legitimately punish you if you have pledged some Bitcoin somewhere else. So they have to invent this other way of leaking your private key to make it work. Similarly, RBI and other financial institutions in India have made it probably difficult for these folks to get access to money, and they have to resort to this kind of very kind of, I would call it a violating way of getting money, where the only resort they have is not to go through like a system where, let's say, there was a way to get access to money. But of course, you could argue that they shouldn't have access to money, and RBI is doing a good thing. But then, there is a way that the Chinese apps have figured out that there is a way to make money here. They're not going to lose money. So they know that these loans will be paid back. So they know that there is a market for this, which means that this market is somewhat positive sum. So it's possible that if RBI had a way to give loans to these guys, then the loans would be returned back at a higher APR. But of course, RBI has a moral outlook on this. And that's why the moral outlook makes it much more difficult to engineer market-based products. If it was entirely market-driven, then this Chinese app would have been legit and they would have just charged a real APR and they would have sent you to jail if you don't pay it. But they can't do that because there's no regulation to get you to jail. So they will take with virtual jail in some sense, right? They fuck with your whatever, social media or something. I think it's a very profound point. I think in Bitcoin land, Bitcoin is being this moral entity which says, I don't care about the rest of the world. I'm kind of ensconced in my own world. And if you want to put up a system where you will get penalized if you do something bad in the world, you have to resort to like all sorts of shenanigans like this. There's no easy way. Like Ethereum has an easy way. It says that there's a smart contract. The smart contract says, you know what, if you fuck up there, then I will make sure that your deposit will get slashed here. And the deposit is localized to the deposit in that particular account. It's kind of easy. So it's an open system where you can actually code this market-based idea. But Bitcoin is a much more rigid system where you can't code up these things. So you have to resort to all sorts of shenanigans.
Right. I guess, it's all fun and games as long as, you're talking about moving bits around within a network. So, have at it. So, what is WBTC? Once again, I'm sorry, man. Like, I kind of blanked on a lot of things today. So
That's okay. That's
I
okay.
think,
I can tell you one more interesting drama going on in the crypto industry, which is I think a fun one as well. Again, this one is also like kind of funny. It again goes back to the idea that there is so much Bitcoin kind of locked up in the world with so much liquidity, so much money there, and people want to do fun things with it. People want to do creative things with it. They want to get yield on it, for example, as simple as that. They want to be able to fund real projects with it and get a yield on it, but they don't want to sell the Bitcoin because they want to participate in the appreciation of Bitcoin's value without sacrificing the yield on it. That's what they want. And to do that, you have to make the Bitcoin go somewhere else. You have to have a representation of the Bitcoin on some other network or some other place where you can get yield on it. People have done this in the past where they said, take a loan on Bitcoin and you can get a yield on it or whatever, right? And those guys went very badly over the last 4 or 5 years. So there was a big blow up of Celsius, of BlockFi, of Voyager. So these three were Bitcoin banks or Bitcoin lending agencies where you would deposit Bitcoin and decided to update itself with the new Windows update. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so the point I was trying to make was there is a whole bunch of Bitcoin that wants to generate yield, and there is no way to do it on Bitcoin because it's kind of an inert asset in Bitcoin network. So you have to bridge this Bitcoin to some other place where you want to put this Bitcoin somewhere else and do something else with it. So one of the ways of bridging Bitcoin is you trust a custodian, somebody like Bitco, which is a company. You send Bitcoin to that address and you trust them completely that they will not run with it. And they will have a smart contract on Ethereum, which they will mint a corresponding one token for you when you send one Bitcoin to them. So you send one Bitcoin to Bitco, Bitco will mint one, what is called WBTC or wrapped BTC on Ethereum network. And WBTC has approximately 300,000 Bitcoins wrapped and minted on Ethereum right now. So it's the largest wrapped Bitcoin instance. And all of that Bitcoin backing the WBTC on Ethereum is held in custody by this company called Bitco. The problem is Bitco itself doesn't make any money on this. It's a very expensive business because you have to think about all the custody hassles. You have to pay somebody to do the custody. You have to get insurance on it. You have to make sure it's maintained properly. And you have to use it all the time because people are minting and redeeming all the time. Let's say they want to redeem from the WBTC back to Bitcoin. They will burn the WBTC there in the Ethereum blockchain, and they will have to be given one Bitcoin back on the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is like this whole operation that WBTC is running or Bitcoin is running, they got a bit tired of it. They said, you know what, we don't want to we don't make any money off this. So I want to give this custody business to somebody else, and or at least partner with somebody else. And of all the people to pick up partnership, they picked up Justin Sun. And Justin Sun is a somewhat of a infamous character in crypto. He's the founder of the Tron blockchain. He has had other projects where he has been, I would say, has had some shady dealings. So people are now a little bit worried that this WBTC asset, if the minted Bitcoin on Ethereum is backed by 100% Bitcoin on the Bitco custody network, it's okay. But if the Bitco custody is now owned by Justin Sun and he chooses to take this 50% of the Bitcoin and do something else with it, the WBTC on Ethereum loses value. And WBTC on Ethereum is used as a collateral for lending protocols, and it just goes, and it's a heavy tentacled integration to the rest of DeFi on Ethereum. So the DeFi people on Ethereum got worried and they started delisting WBTC in all these places when this news came out. So currently it is stuck in this kind of limbo where WBTC is trying to find people to let it make money without losing trust. So it's in this kind of very delicate position right now where some people are coming to help WBTC so that they can keep it and keep the ethos intact without giving it to Justin Sun. Justin Sun saying that, hey, you know what, I'm a cool guy, I'm a good guy, why are you guys not happy with me? And so it's this weird situation now where all of Bitcoin on DeFi, which is coming through this WBTC bridge, is under risk right now. In the next month, we will know how it will play out. I think it's a very important story, not discussed enough by the outside media because they don't appreciate how deeply embedded WBTC is in the Ethereum ecosystem. Because there is so much Bitcoin which wants to earn yield, which has moved to the Ethereum ecosystem through this bridge. And if the bridge is becoming weaker and weaker every day, that whole ecosystem is under threat in some sense. And imagine if the big Bitcoin collateral on Ethereum collapses, that will take out like half of DeFi with it. So it's a bit of a tricky situation.
Yeah, tricky situation indeed. So to wrap this up, you mentioned ZKTLS, like
what is this? So I in tribute to the All In podcast, we will do our science corner towards the end. In the science corner, we will discuss what is called ZKTLS, which is a new kind of innovation coming out of the crypto space. It's actually rather old in terms of concept. It was kind of invented in the 1990s. But I think now the innovation has reached, the implementation has reached a phase where it can be talked about in actual existence. So the idea essentially is this. Let's say you open your bank account's webpage. Let's say you open canarabank.in, you look at the balance, and now you have the balance shown on the screen. And let's say you want to convince your neighbor that you have more money than him, or if you have more money than say 2 lakh rupees. You can take a screenshot of the Canara Bank website and you can send the screenshot to him, and he will look at, okay, oh, it looks like a browser, oh, it looks like Canara Bank. But you can draw the screenshot on Photoshop as well, which is fairly easy. So is there a way to prove to somebody that you actually went to the Canara Bank website, actually downloaded the data, actually saw that number on screen, and the number is more than 2 lakh rupees? So this is what ZKTLS does. ZKTLS is kind of the idea that at the internet layer, which is TLS means transport layer security. So at the internet layer, where you are dealing with actual websites, actual chat, or these Web 2 protocols, can you make proofs of statements which are about facts in that world? For example, can you say that you have ordered 20 meals from Swiggy in the last 6 months? And if Swiggy decides to launch a token, or if somebody else wants to launch a token and they want to drop it to the Swiggy users, they can find you as a possible Swiggy user without Swiggy having to confirm that. So here, of course, if Canara Bank gives me a statement saying that I have more than 2 lakh rupees and they sign it with Canara Bank's public key or attestation or whatever, then the problem is solved. But the assumption here is Canara Bank doesn't want to do any of that. Swiggy doesn't want to do any of that. But you as a user want to prove your usage in Swiggy, your balance in Canara Bank, your ride share quality in Uber, your coolness in Instagram, or whatever it is, right? So if you are Web 2 identity, you want to expose parts of it to outside world in a way in which it is confirmed and proven. How do you do it? So ZKTLS is the idea that you can prove this using a combination of browser-based tools and some cryptography. is kind of, I think, an interesting concept. It's gonna, of course, very nascent. It's not happening anytime but there is a future where you can say that without the cooperation of your vendor, of your Canara Bank, of your Swiggy, of your Uber, you can take your identity and kind of show that you have this identity in the Web2 world to somebody else, and the somebody else will believe you because they trust that this website was Canara Bank and this Canara Bank session was HTTPS. It was authenticated, and the money was greater than whatever 2 lakhs or whatever. So this is the new kind of interesting idea. I'm kind of excited about it because it has some utility. You don't know what are the utilities are unless this thing comes mainstream, and it's like a browser plugin or it's an app on your phone. So whenever you are on a screenshot, let's say you want to prove a screen there, you open this app and say click screenshot. It'll take a screenshot, but it'll actually also do like magic, saying that hide this amount, hide this thing. You kind of swipe it a little bit here and there, and then it gives you a proof, and you share the proof with your WhatsApp to whatever, and that guy will do whatever it needs to be. I don't know. I'm hopeful. And
So
as again, this is future tech.
no, I mean this is not so finding PMF on this is very simple because there is a torrent of idiots on Twitter who take their PNL screenshots at the end of the day and post it. And if you add up all the PNLs here, it exceeds India's GDP, right? so
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 some of them are definitely cooking their screenshots.
yeah, so if you really want to push this product, then those are the guys you should push it on.
Yes, yes. I mean, of course, that's like a easy audience. But yeah, I mean, it's true, right? I mean, because we have relied on. I mean, I think the world has kind of come to this conclusion where you don't really think about proving things in a kind of infallible way. The only way to really do it is to get a notarized letter or whatever it is, right? Which is like still very meat space, very analog in some sense. The digital world, the digital equivalent of that has not taken off really. Which I think, given how much activity is digital right now, I think should be an equivalent of that kind of flowing on the parallel all the time, which I think will happen. So anyway, that's kind of the hopeful future tech which will be applied to Web2 and Web3 both. So
Right. So with that, let's wrap up this month's Kryptonite. So it's Tejasvi, thanks for joining us, and
indeed, sir. Till next
we'll
month.
do this next month.
All right. Take care, people. Have a good start of September, and happy Ganpati festival to all of you.
Thank you. Wish you the same.